Okay. I would really love it if y'all would mind using the QR code there and doing that. I was going to also have kind of along the side. There's just 3 radio button questions, really simple. Just trying to get a feel of, are the people here also presenters? Are they looking to help other people? Are they looking to get help from other people? And then optionally, if you want to include your name, team number, whatever, that would be great too. I want to be able to kind of look at that and make sure, am I talking about the right stuff for the audience that we have here? So would really appreciate you taking the time to do that. As I mentioned, I was a student on 451 in 2005, my senior year only. Mentored in college, don't recommend it, discourage it. I did it and it's fine, but not good. And then mentored 2936, founded 5414. Computer engineer, graduated from Purdue in 09. Spent 15 years working at NASA Johnson Space Center. This past September, I left NASA to join a company called Rugged Robotics, and we have a lot of FRC alum there as well. And so a lot of, even just getting NASA as a job, getting Rugged as a job, a lot of those things happen from networking. So whether it's FRC or general, networking is just a really important, valuable thing to do. So I'm the head drive coach for 5414. And 5414's won district champs impact and EI, and we've also been district event winners. We try to do a lot of different things, and a lot of those things are possible just really from the networking aspect of what we've done. Some background for me is that there's different amounts of locals. Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, Rugged is it's a robotics company that basically, imagine something like, I don't know, 1/3 or less the size of an FRC robot, and it prints blueprints on the ground, life-size blueprints on the ground. So yeah, Dusty is our main competitor. So there's Dusty, HP, and Rugged. Those are really the only 3 companies that are doing anything like what we're doing. So very cool. I enjoy it a lot. Happy to talk more about that hallways or whatever. I'm sure we're going to be expanding and looking for FRC people to come be operators with it. So lots of different types of locals, of course. One of the great things about FRC is it's worldwide, but it also means that everybody's experience is a little bit different. So I just want to share, I know, my experience has mostly been in dense areas where I've needed help, and only in the past few years have I really felt like I'm in a good place to be able to offer help and assistance and guidance to other people. So a lot of my experience is in that dense area. If we get later in the presentation and we have time to kind of have some back and forth and talk, I would love to hear what kind of experiences people in sparse locales, how they try to get help or receive help or help others. Obviously, a lot of that probably needs to be done more virtually, because when you have to drive a couple hours to get anywhere, that's obviously very difficult, and that can be a very challenging thing. So I think everybody ultimately keeps one foot in the needs help area. Whether you, let's see, not share. Whether you've been doing FRC for 20 years or it's your first year, chances are like you're going to need help with something along the way. FRC is just a lot of stuff. So my objectives: more workshops hosted for local teams by local teams. Alan Gregory, Scott Ripto from 1477, and I have been, Alan's been doing it for a long time, since 2012, I think, or something. And then the past few years, I've been helping out with it as well. And it's something that on the surface, if you just look at it, it seems like it's a lot of work. We end up, there talking for a weekend, a Saturday and a Sunday, or Friday and Saturday, depending on what it is that we've done. But we have that 15, 20 years of experience. We can just get up and talk about the things that we have. And we put together an agenda, an outline. I do it just to kind of help make sure that like we have a guided conversation of things, but it doesn't need to be something that you put weeks and months into preparing to do. Because the teams that you're trying to help there aren't the teams that are already, top in the world. You're just trying to help teams that like they may struggle to survive year to year. You're trying to give them a good foundation and all the knowledge that they don't have, because it might be one overworked, underappreciated, overwhelmed teacher with 10 students or something like that with no real financial support. And there's so much that goes into FRC, it's hard to stay up on top of it. And so when you get a weekend together with a bunch of teams and you hear about each other's struggles and they get to see how you go about solving things, there's just a lot of value in getting up and talking about that without having to necessarily put a ton of structure and effort behind it. Thank you. Definitely aim it more towards your average team and or newer mentors. Thank you very much. I think there's just a lot of value for that. I would also say one of my objectives would be more Slacks or similar. It could be Discord, Mattermost, whatever it is, and more engagement in those Slacks. So a few years back, Alan, I'm just going to apparently promote Alan throughout a bunch of this, but I think Alan started the Texas Mentor Slack, and that's been really great. There's times where it's just like Alan and me and Rachel or someone that have conversations in the Slack, and there's not a whole lot else going on. But I think there's a lot of value in just having those conversations publicly. And like even today, somebody asked their question. There was a little bit of back and forth. And he's like, man, I love this group. Thank you so much. I have my answer now. And that wouldn't have happened without that Slack. It might be some email somewhere. It might be a text conversation, but having that big and open is really valuable. And you know, eventually if Alan and me or Rachel or whoever are having conversations, somebody might chime in, somebody might pick up something they wouldn't have otherwise, or maybe they don't read it again until springtime, and that's fine too. And then more direct offers of help. I think one of the things that a lot of teams will do meaning well is offer help, but not really offer it in a way that encourages follow through. And then I also want more people to be thinking about how your team is now your tool to have that impact. For a long time, when I started mentoring, I viewed FRC as my tool to go and have an impact on the community. A few years back, I was really frustrated with FRC on a couple of different things. I was frustrated with HQ and how they were handling some things. And I kind of flipped my mindset of like, FRC isn't my tool, FRC isn't my tool, Pearadox is my tool. Like, we're going to do whatever Pearadox thinks is the right thing to do for our community. And when we go to present awards or whatever, we're going to form it in some way that hopefully fits whatever it is. But ultimately, we just care about doing what we think is good. And that mindset for me, I think, was really valuable in understanding that, like, it's now not FRC, something that I have no control over. And not that I have as much control over Pearadox as I want to sometimes with the school district involved. But like, ultimately, I realized, like, man, Pearadox and the students on my team, like, that's my impact. And so, again, through the networking, like, there's just a lot that can be done there. Yeah, that's it. So why network? Obviously, one of the big things is it can help make life easier for you. You can get reminders, you can get insights, others' experiences. And I don't know that there's a better combo than first and last minute information. It just seems like all the time, no matter how much effort you put into it, like, you're going to get something the day of. As an example, I'm going to pick on FRC in Texas a little bit. We got an email on Thursday for a kickoff event thing that happened today that was only sent to one lead mentor from every team. And like that communication, like, we saw that, I put it in Slack, and a bunch of teams were like, oh, thank you for sharing that. And so having that network, again, being in that Texas Mentor Slack, for example, is very valuable to get that extra last minute information you may miss otherwise. Hopefully you'll become a better and more knowledgeable mentor in the process. I know I learned so much from other people on how they do things. I'm a computer engineer that sometimes feels like I'm not really that good at programming, not really good that good at hardware stuff. And like, I'm just, you know, trying to fit in and pick up whatever I can along the way. And there's some really smart people that we get to work with. If you've been to some of the other presentations, I'm sure you've heard things about tribal knowledge, information wars, and whatever. But like, there's just so much that to be had. It was funny at one of the mentor workshops we were talking, and one of the other mentors was like, man, everybody seems to have their like little paranoias or like legends of like, well, we do it this way because one year this thing happened. And it's like, well, that's true, but also those things really do happen. So we really do need to do these things, but it's not documented. It's not something you know unless you've experienced it and gone through that pain. And so you're like, okay, I'm going to tell everyone they need to do this type of thing. And yeah. Also, you can give and get extra scouting information, whether you're a team that is picking other teams or a team hoping to get picked for playoffs. I know that there's been times that I've reached out to mentors through the Texas Mentor Slack or somebody that I have their phone number and be like, hey, what was going on in this match that something broke? Or I know people have reached out to me and been like, what was going on with you guys? You guys were mostly good. And then all of a sudden it was like, I don't know if I can trust you now. And being able to have that communication and explain those things is helpful for playoff type stuff, if that's what your goal is. A little bit more, maybe a little bit more esoteric, is the world does not need your collection of resources. So a lot of people, of course, like you're proud of getting your stuff together that you want to share with the world. That's all great. But I want you to change your mind to your local community can benefit from your collection of resources. If I take my collection of resources that I think were really life-changing for me and put them on Chief Delphi, like, that community can probably already find most of those things. Sometimes it's helpful, of course, to be able to like consolidate a bunch because there's so much out there. Open Alliance is really great, but there's a really, the signal to noise ratio there can be really rough. So curating some of that stuff, it can be valuable. But really, if you change your mindset to like the teams that I know, the people in my hour radius or whatever can really benefit, that's helpful. It's obviously much easier to have an impact locally than globally. Because you can interact with them, they know you. I know one of the things that I value is that as mentors get to know me, hopefully if somebody from my team does something that reflects poorly on the team, maybe it wasn't intentional, maybe it was, I don't know. But that mentor now hopefully feels comfortable in talking to me about the situation. If that happens, when you have maybe kids reaching out trying to have an impact globally or whatever, that relationship isn't there. And then teams are more likely to utilize advice from teams they regularly compete with and against to a degree. Of course, teams like 1678 or 254, they put out, everybody's going to love it and take it, absorb it in right away. Teams outside of Texas maybe know about Pearadox, but they're probably not going to look to us for answers about how to solve something. But the teams in Texas that compete with us, that interact with us, they may be like, oh, Pearadox, they're a large team. We know that they kind of have some things together. We could ask them about how they do things. How do they solve this problem? Right? We know more about that team. We can have a conversation with them. And then I would, be interested in trying to build that relationship with them as well, to follow up and learn more about their particular problem. Being accessible is an important follow-up to the help provided there. I'm going to try to not spend too long on this part, but FRC definitely has sustainability problems. I could talk about that, I'm sure, for a long time. I've got a couple of graphs that I'll try to not spend too long on. But ultimately, 65% of all teams that fold last less than 4 years. So if you look at any team that's folded, 65% of all the teams that have ever folded within those first 4 years. There could be a lot of reasons for that. Rookie grants run out. It was maybe started by one dedicated or family that graduated high school. Ultimately, though, FRC is hard. Like, you could list a ton of different reasons why it is that they fold in those first 4 years. All of them really comes down to, you can point to FRC is hard. Having a support network is really crucial to making that less hard. Just some graphs. I won't spend long, but I just want to hopefully convey emotions and feelings to you more than the specific numbers. The blue line is the number of active teams, and the gray line is the number of retired teams or folded teams or dead teams, whatever term you want to put there. Unsurprisingly, during the pandemic, it finally happened that the number of teams that have folded is a larger number than the teams that currently exist. And to me, what that really says is those teams that folded in the pandemic years were those young teams. I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead. If we look at the orange line here, you can see the secondary axis on your right-hand side, and that shows what the average age of existing FRC teams were in a given year. And so you can see a pretty big spike from 2020 to 2021. What that tells me is that it was a lot of young teams that didn't survive the pandemic. I don't think that's surprising to anyone, but I think that really emphasizes how vulnerable and fragile those teams are in those early years. To go from an average age of about 8 for all FRC teams to almost a whole year older. This is another graph that maybe I can't convey too much. The numbers don't matter. This is your 0 point. 25% of teams, let's see, before they fold, about 25% of them fold in their first year. And then another 20% of teams that fold during their second year. So yeah, you can see that more than 50% of teams that fold in those first 3 years. And so just, I don't know, really important stuff to me. One last graph here. Again, the numbers don't matter in specifics, but what's happening here is these are all the teams that started in 92, 93, 94 onwards. And anything that's blue is a team that from that rookie year that still exists. Anything that's red is a team from that rookie year that no longer exists. And so if you can't see the numbers, but all of these numbers kind of hover around 60%. If you kind of look at it, it looks like, yeah, half or more of the teams from any rookie year don't exist anymore. And you can definitely see, where that first year here, 21%, now 55%, down to 54%. So again, just trying to convey the sentiment to you guys more than anything else, that pretty much 60% of any given team, or 60% of all FRC teams that start end up folding. And of those, most of them fold in their first, second, or third year. So maybe a little out of order. I don't know. I probably could have planned things a little bit better. But what is networking? So it can be big or little things. So joining or creating Slacks, it can be geographically based. Book clubs. I'm in a book club mentor Slack. Maybe just because it's a group of people that you kind of all think similarly, or you want to be able to talk about things or whatever. And then setting up and or participating in occasional social events, emails, texting others, inviting others to your workshop, going to their workshop, reviewing code or design upon requests. And I definitely encourage social things where you can move from group to group easily. It's kind of tough if you go to an event where everybody's like watching one thing together. I hate this of like everybody's just looking at me, right? I would much prefer y'all to be able to be in small groups. Kara's going to talk about that in her thing a little bit tomorrow as well. This isn't networking to me, this specific thing. It's all the stuff outside of here. This is just a quick picture from the thing. I talked about the message that went out, and you can see that we ended up getting 31 people, most of them being like, I didn't know that this was the thing. I'm lead mentor 1 or I'm lead mentor 2 and I didn't get this. So, that kind of networking is important. How to network. There's a lot of default well-meaning offers that are ineffective. Saying things like, let us know how we can help. Anytime you need anything, let me know. Come on over to any time to practice. If you don't already have a relationship with that person, there's not going to be follow-up on there. They don't know how serious you are, especially if they're new to the community and they don't really understand the whole like gracious professionalism, cooperation, we really want you to succeed type thing. It doesn't sink in with them. So that's a very generous, nice offer, but it's mostly ineffective. So you really need to be direct and set up specific times and dates and reiterate with them. So sometimes what feels like a really big ask to some teams is essentially nothing to another given team. There have been times where a team's like, hey, we can't get a motor in time. Can we please use one of yours? And I'm like, yes, please come on over, take it. And they're like, okay, we'll pay you back. We'll get you a new one. And I'm like, don't worry about it. Like, you're taking a sim motor, definitely just you're doing me a favor, right? Like, and it could be a wheel or whatever the case may be. It might be something that like, oh, we use this for prototyping. You guys just have it. If you use it in competition, great. If you use it just for prototyping and you decide you don't want it, great. You can keep it. I don't care. And there's lots of teams that are going to be like that of like, and I'll be honest too, of like, okay, yeah, no, I really would like this replaced or I really would like this back. But for a lot of teams, a lot of those teams that we give a motor to, the concept of being able to buy a motor kind of like on demand and getting it quickly is entirely foreign to them because they have to go through a school district PO that it takes forever. They don't get paid back. It's coming out of the teacher's, wallet or whatever instead. And so understanding that those dynamics can be very difficult or different is part of being direct and telling them how much, yes, please let me help you. The activation energy to reach out for help can be tough too. When you're overwhelmed already because everything's going so quick, everything's new, like the thought of reaching out to somebody to ask for help can be tough. And also there's just generally kind of a mindset or culture of like, I should struggle through this a little bit first and see if I can figure it out before I ask for help. And sometimes that's great. Sometimes you'll spend a week doing something that I could have answered in a text or whatever, whatever the case may be. We can also just forget how much knowledge and context we've accrued on different things over the 5, 10, 15, 20 years that you've been doing this. And we've internalized too that FRC teams really want to help each other. New teams, those teams in those 1 to 3 years, they probably have not internalized that yet. That's not something that really clicks to them the same way. So I'm going to talk about some things Pearadox has done. I'll talk about some things that I've done. And take it for however it might fit in with your team. So we do a pair up kickoff. We invite other teams, especially the young teams, to come to kickoff with us. They can see how we analyze the game. Maybe more importantly, gives us a chance to help them analyze the game and like highlight the important things to them, highlight the rules, highlight you should read the rules, whatever the case may be. So we'll usually offer to pick up the kit of parts. That's always a mess. We try to do the circuit thing, and every year still something seems to go wrong with that, whatever. We have an open doors policy, but going back to what I was saying earlier of like, yeah, you can come down anytime, reach out to us and ask, but specifically I've set aside Sundays from 1 to 6. We have a small group of students that come in for our own stuff, but otherwise Sundays, like, come here during this time. We have this time set aside specifically for other teams to come. And going one step further, we even have what we call inspection perfection. We also call it an open house, depending on who we're kind of like talking about. I usually try to offer like, hey, if you come to this thing as a rookie or second year or whatever, I'm going to give you a battery. We'll wire it up together so you know that it's wired well. We have robot inspectors there so you can go through an inspection process, etc. But that one, we have a specific date and a specific time, and we're telling people, come to this thing. And we try to get that to them early. So I think having that specific date, time, it becomes now like a field trip where they have to do it. I was talking to Jersey Voltage and they said, you know, they were planning on coming to it. They kind of set it as a deadline. They weren't ready to come, but their teachers or mentors said, no, we're going to go down anyways. And they were really thankful that they did, because just being there in our shop and the things that we had, we were able to help them through a lot more. And sometimes it again still feels intimidating of like, oh, we don't have our bumpers together. We can't, it doesn't make sense for us to go, or we're not functioning. We're not going to drive in the field. But by having that specific date of like, hey, this is an event, come to it, that helps encourage to make sure that happens.
We have a team about an hour with side field. Years ago, like, oh yeah, come over, whatever, like, you know, let us know you're coming. A couple years back, they switched to filling out. Here's a sign up genius.
Yeah.
Like, sign up for a day, you see what other teams are coming, and it's like, it's so much better. You don't feel like you're imposing, you know,
and it probably helps open up the doors too of like, now you might also feel comfortable like, oh, hey, can we also come out this other time, right? Like, as opposed to like only worrying about the time you're signed up for. Yeah, helps open up those doors. We also have something we call paratroopers. A lot of teams have that, of where they go and help out other teams, of course, at competition. But I would like to believe anyways, that because some of those teams have already come to our facility and some of our students have already been side by side working with them in our facility, it makes that a little bit more comfortable in a competition environment as well to get help from us. And I don't know if that's actually true or not. That's my hope. That's my mindset from it. And then we also have GGT, Girls Get Together, Safe Spaces in STEM, and Brilliant Black Builders. Those are our inclusion events. Carrie's going to talk a lot about them in the meaningful inclusion thing tomorrow, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But that is really something where we try to network, have small groups to be able to talk together. And again, that might be something that maybe helps make some teams have a good impression of us and the students on our team and feel comfortable asking for help outside of what we are trying to accomplish with those inclusion events as well. So some things, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm curious if these are great things doing among mentors and some of these are students.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Tracking metrics or so on, like even surveying your own students as to what percent of that any other students with involved in the program, whether numbers are going up or down over time.
Yeah, it's tough to put in the energy to track some of those things, of course, but there is value in doing that too, because then you can use those things to help justify or get better support on why it is to do those. But yeah. Okay, so some things I do. I'm in several mentor group chats. I was talking to Karen, I was like, just feeling about it, I was like, oh, I'm probably in like 3 or 4 different mentor Slacks. And then I looked at it and it's like, okay, I think I'm in 8 Slacks and 7 of them are FIRST robotics related. And I was like, I don't even realize that I'm in all those different things. Some of them are mostly dead. And sometimes, you know, you'll get a couple of things in them just for sporadic things. But again, having that network of people that like, this is relevant to just this type of group of mentors, and being able to get that information is valuable. I lurk a bit in CD and Discord. I feel like I lurk less in them now than I did when I was younger. I don't know if I'm older and grumpier or what, but I also try to encourage activity and discussion in Texas Mentor Slack. Like I mentioned, there's times where it's just me and another mentor. It seems like just having a one-to-one conversation. That's okay. Having that conversation in a public channel, I think, is still important and valuable. It's also hard sometimes for me to even remember, because if it's in one of the other mentor Slacks and we're having good conversation about it there, just trying to mentally think like, oh, I should make sure that this thing's also being talked about in the whatever other Slack it is that we're doing, that there could be valuable conversation about. After coming out of the pandemic, Alan and I both started trying to specifically reach out to the rookies and some of the young teams in the Houston area. And so we would specifically email and or text those new rookie teams as best as we can. If you were at Marshall's thing, you heard about like the need to have a way to communicate and reach out to other teams. It's a real struggle because no matter how much we try to do things, like we have to convince somebody else to forward an email to that team to then convince them to reach out to us. And that's a lot of effort and to convince them to follow through with all that so that we can make that direct conversation, that direct connection. But we tried to just send a weekly-ish email with some insights, offers of help, major updates, because again, there's just so much information that comes out so fast, and trying to understand what's relevant to you or to a specific team is overwhelming. And so trying to summarize it and emphasize the important things is something we can try to do. And I imagine most of the people in this room can try to do. I'm realizing now I meant to pull up I got so screwed up with, I wanted to take a look. Let's see if we look here. Oh, I guess not. All right. Doesn't want to show. That's fine. And then the workshop that I mentioned. It sounds like a lot of effort. It's really not. And you can reuse slides or agenda from a previous year. Honestly, if you reach out to me or Alan or Scott, I'm pretty sure we would say, if you want to take them as is, we don't care. That's like, feel free to use it, modify it, whatever. Targeting the local community, I think, is really valuable there. Last year, we actually got reached out to from people in Dallas and Austin or San Antonio and asked us to go and give that same workshop out there, which we were fine with. But at least my goal with it was like to show them it doesn't need, Alan and I aren't special. There's lots of mentors that could do what we did in that scenario. Try to convince, teams in the Dallas area, the San Antonio, Austin area, do your own workshop, get your people together, talk about whatever things you want to talk about. And again, it's really reiterating information that for a lot of people, I assume here at this conference, if you're coming in from out of state, you're probably already pretty serious about FRC robotics. It might be information that seems basic, but hitting that local community, you're gonna reap the benefits of it come competition time, and you have a district event full of teams more well prepared for the event. All right, so who to network with? You could definitely have two different mindsets in this, in my opinion. Obviously, the teams that need it are those teams in the 1 to 3. I talked about how those are the teams most likely to fold. And they're also the most likely to not know where to get that extra information. They probably don't have much of an online presence. They don't have that tribal knowledge. They don't already have a network built up. They're probably overwhelmed and not good at picking just a few things to focus on, especially depending on what message it is that they received about, how it is that you just spend a couple $1,000s, you go to this event, and you're at events with some of the best teams in the world that have really great looking robots, and trying to help them reduce their scope appropriately for what it is that they have. Alternatively, I think we all know teams that have been around, it seems like for a long, long time, they've been around forever, but they're just kind of in this constant state of like, they haven't figured it out yet, right? They show up, they might have a robot that works most matches. Maybe they don't have bumpers when they show up to their event, whatever. And, you could reach out to those teams and see if you can get maybe one of their parents or a mentor or something in one of those Slacks, so that you can increase that communication and hopefully help them be more prepared going into an event. A lot of what we end up talking about at the workshop is goal setting and how to talk to judges for awards and how to prepare your team to talk to judges about awards. And some of those teams that are 4+ years old that maybe they have a process to be able to stick around from year to year, but haven't found a way to move up at all, they would benefit a lot from networking, I'm sure. All right, so how to network. I'm sure many of you have seen various memes about introverts and extroverts. I would encourage you to have the same mindset here of networking. So if, how do introverts make friends? Dogs count as friends, or an extrovert adopted them. It's going to be the same thing, except, how does a rookie team network? They get adopted by an older team. So find a team to adopt. Networking is hard. FRC is time consuming. We're responsible for kids when we're at events when it would be best for us to be able to network. And so all these things just make it tough to build that network. I think We even have like business cards for the Texas Mentor Slack so that we can hand it out at events where it's like, okay, I know you're responsible for a lot right now. I'm going to give you this piece of paper that hopefully sits in your pocket that tomorrow or whenever you pull it out and you're like, oh yeah, I should go join the Slack. And then trying to meet others halfway. I'm in Houston, very big area. The closest teams to us are still 30, 45 minutes away, despite the fact that I think there's probably like 40 teams-ish in Houston or something like that when I counted pre-pandemic. It's still a big effort for some of those teams to be able to figure out how to get to our place that we have a full field at. And so being able to go out to them or find a way to like do a tour of some of the rookie teams and have that face-to-face connection rather than only via texts or phone calls or emails or whatever, and understand a little bit about what it is that they're working with. And some of it also meeting halfway can just be virtually as well, reaching out to them with an email or text as opposed to expecting them to reach out to you. And then having the conversations openly as opposed to just in like DMs. I think this is getting near the end here, but I want to talk a little bit about how I approach things. And when I'm trying to network and help other teams as a person in their team in that position, I feel like you can kind of have two extremes. You can have the very direct and like, no, don't do that. You should do this instead. And you can have that, if you really want to do this, this is how I would recommend doing it. I don't encourage it, but this is how I would do it. I have generally been more on the, if you really want to do this, this is how I would do it. And this year I finally got hit with a team that like, they hit themselves with their pediatric penetration purpose pistols and their foot guns, right? So like I had a team that they really wanted to switch. They felt like their first event, the main reason they didn't get picked was because they didn't have swerve. That was not the main reason that they didn't get picked for playoffs, but they really wanted to switch. We invited them over and like they had 2 meetings where they were trying to redo a whole robot going from something that they had that was driving to something that is very difficult to do and you should generally do in an off season. And, you know, I tried to tell them like, you might want to stick with this, but they kind of had their mindset. I didn't fight on it too much. I was like, okay, well, if you guys want to come over, we're going to do everything we can to help you out. We gave them a, not a swerve gearbox, but we gave them some other gearboxes. We spent a lot of time with them. We had kids sit with them pretty much the entire competition. And the kids on that team did not have a good time. Like I felt awful because I felt like I was actually in a position where I should have been more forceful with that coach and say, don't do this to your kids. I thought that like they kind of agreed that their goal was like, okay, even if it doesn't work, like where you want to switch to this. And because it's not my position to say what another team's goals should or shouldn't be. If they had a goal and a mindset of like, it's okay if this doesn't work, this is what we want to try, then that's fine. I don't think that they had enough of that goal setting conversation about making that switch and if it's okay if it didn't work or not. And I struggled with that of like, I was in a position to help with it. So I finally hit that limit. I'm still going to generally be in the more in the, if you really want to do it this way, or this is how we can try to help. There's certainly value. You kind of need both ends of those. I don't know, you need mom and dad or whatever, right? Or the angel and devil on your shoulder, whatever example you want to use there of you kind of need both talks, and every team's going to respond differently. I kind of need a different approach there. Some timing things for networking during the spring. Again, that was kind of like the weekly reach out via email or text. During the summer, there's definitely occasional Slack posts, but this is when I would recommend workshops. Something like this, I think, is a little bit better before school year starts, when you might get some teachers that can be able to come. If you're doing something locally, again, trying to find out a time that you'll be able to get engagement from others. And of course, off-season events are a great time to try to network with some people, a lot less stress, things there. So what to do when you're looking for help, or maybe another mindset to have is what do you want to convey to people if you're trying to get them to get help? You want to make sure that they know they're not going to be annoying, or if you're trying to get help, you're not being annoying. I'll tell you if I reach a limit of like, okay, I need you to stop reaching out to me about this, or I need you to figure something else out. I would let you know. And I think most other teams or people in that kind of position would also say similarly. Tell the teams to get their code on GitHub. Having pictures or videos from several different angles or different amounts of zooms especially if you're doing CAD, I don't see a reason any team shouldn't be doing Onshape. You need a really strong reason, I think, in my opinion, to not use Onshape, because you can send a link to Onshape and you can get a design review from people across the country, and they'll have a much better idea about what it is that you're trying to do. Of course, be open to input and changes and pushes back any pushbacks on what it is that you think it is that you want to do. Sometimes you might have an idea of like, oh, I think I want to do this. And somebody with more experience, of course, might be able to tell you why you don't actually want to do that. You just think that you do. But also be clear on what kind of help or guidance you want. If I'm talking to somebody and they tell me like, tell me if this is a bad idea, I will. If they also tell me, we know it's going to be a bad idea, we're going to do it anyway, that helps me get my mindset right about how it is that I'm going to try to help you. Or if I'll be like, okay, well, good luck. I really can't help you with that. So I think those are important mindsets to have if you are trying to get help or if you're helping somebody figure out how to get help. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation here. So you can reach out to me at pearlandfrc@gmail.com. I'm a Hartnett on Chief Delphi. Even though I lurk on it, I do still get the messages. Happy to take any questions. I'm not gonna lie, there's a part of me that really wanted to be like, well, let's network and play some games in some small groups right here when I looked over here. Maybe a little bit to share is that like, when we talk about networking type things, trying to do small groups and have an activity for them to bond over or whatever can be valuable. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I just wanted to reinforce the local plaque and area for quite a while. Because it had only about 130 members on there, and I can tell you our most popular channel is Need Apart, and probably the second most popular, which is super because particularly in build season, the way supply chains and
Yeah.
is super critical. And the second most popular channel basically been one of the random. Again, getting to know people on whatever level and having a comfort with various people is powerful. So even if you're doing it by conversing about something that is kind of first adjacent or totally random, like best first dogs or like
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's really
Yeah, just feeling that comfort with somebody because it makes it easier when you need to ask somebody for help or give somebody help. You just knowing that person is super important. Yeah.
You're gonna set up a flag, right? Have like, what team people were with or.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So I think something to keep in mind is that your free Slacks are only going to have a 30-day history on stuff. So know that it's not going to be 90-day. I'm sorry. It's not going to be like a resource collection type thing. I definitely encourage, like when we have, I think we try to ask people to put their team number after their name, because I think it's really useful to just, if somebody posts, yeah, I need, does anybody have a sim motor or a Neo that we could borrow? Like, I'll look at it and then I'll have to figure out, are you in Dallas? Are you in Austin? Are you in Houston? So having a team number is super valuable there. Otherwise, we have a couple different channels, but I think for the most part, like if it's not very active, you can have very few channels. And then once you start getting more active, that's when you start trying to figure out, okay, what are the things that people start talking about? So we have some that are like, we have all of Texas, and I think we might have a Houston one, a Dallas channel or something like that. We might have one for like the Need Apart type deal. But most of the stuff just ends up getting posted in our general or the FRC one. We have a FTC, FLL, FRC one. So anything you'd add on to that, Alan?
Oh, yeah, I think the biggest thing is doing it and then inviting people to do it. We've had it since a long time, and then for a while they were like, No one talked to it for years, but like make the effort again to bring it back up and get people invited to it.
Yeah.
One of the ways we do it to fix some of these differences. We have a Google form that they have to fill out that to be invited to it, so that one, they give us their name, email, phone number, so then we got more contact information for people. But also confirms that they're 18, so we don't have any children in the mentor flag. We don't want that.
Nope.
And so that helps too, so we have a little bit more contact. Know when people are joining and stuff.
Yeah, I guess maybe to add on to that, we have it's a, tinyurl.com/Texas Mentor Slack or something like that. So hopefully something somewhat easy to remember. I think the admin can also do something, or like you want to make sure that people don't just add people to Slack. You have that capability if you don't turn that off or whatever.
Separately, going back to the thing, I think that's the other. This is the one that I don't. I understand it a little bit because I was there when I was new. But all of the people a lot of people are here who like names in FRC, like people who are lifers. We talk about robots constantly. So if you ask them the question about robots, you are getting us another chance to talk about robots. Of course, that's what we want to do every day. So like you're just annoying us, like asking about robots. That's what we talk about.
It's an escape from the other problems in our life, right? Oh, I know how to solve this one. Yeah. Did I see another hand up somewhere? Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you guys. And pleasure meeting y'all here this weekend. Looking forward to more networking with y'all. Oh, yes, absolutely.